Over the past couple of months, I've kind of struggled with what to say about handhelds. And it's not that there isn't a lack of good things to talk about, it's actually incredibly awesome just where Android handhelds are at right now. But the days are inching ever closer where if your Android handheld has the power, it will play a lot of your Steam library. There's also just not been much buzz for new handhelds for this year, unless the flippy Square was doing it for you. Right now you can pre-order the new Retroid Pocket Nova, a callback to their older designs focusing on a 120Hz OLED 4x3 screen. A lot of people seem excited for this, but I won't be purchasing one personally. With that kind of power, the 4x3 systems I'd be interested in mostly have widescreen hacks, and I prefer a wider screen for more modern systems. It feels like something more for the purists, and it does look quite good, and with essentially a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 inside, you'll be able to upscale some older systems a lot higher. So while it doesn't personally excite me, I'll be keeping my eye on it. Though genuinely, if they had a cheaper model with something like a Snapdragon 865 in it, I'd probably consider buying one. Over the past few months, I have mainly been gaming on my Odin 3 Max model when I've felt like playing something. And with the Steam sale on right now, it's a good time to consider getting some games to try on the Odin 3. Over the weekend I was looking at the under £5 and £7 category to see what kind of games were massively slashed in price, and there was some pretty cool stuff. The other thing I got up to was setting up my lightguns again for my living room, but I'll get to that later as it will probably interest less people and they're difficult to set up. But to start things off, I want to talk about the Thor a little bit because I'm starting to use it again recently and I have a particular reason why. I want to recap things I've done for my Thor just to bring anyone up to speed. I did the Thermal Putty Pro mod a while back to decrease temps and improve frame rates a touch, which I thought was worth doing at the time, but now it may not need recommending due to apps like Cluster Tune where you can underclock your system. This is something I'll talk about a little bit more with the Odin 3 though. I got a new TPU shell from AliExpress that I dyed black again. I just wanted a newer one with less marks. And as people often ask, my front end is Pegasus with the Skyline OS++ theme. I'm also using the app Molnir to dual boot Pegasus to my top screen and Nova to my bottom screen, where I've made the icons a little bigger than before just to use up the space. We have some great dual screen front ends now, but I'm not going to bother with them unless they offer something I really need or if I, say, got a second Thor to experiment with. So, honestly, I've not been using the Thor as much as I expected to, and that's not anything to do with the device itself, it's just that personally I've been enjoying the Odin 3 more. If I didn't have the Odin 3, I'd honestly be very content with the Thor and what it can do now. My PC emulation videos on the Thor are 7 months old now, so PC emulation must be so much better on it since then. Had I owned the Odin 3 first, I honestly might have been content with the light or base version of the Thor as a companion handheld and one mostly for proper dual screen gaming, as currently I'm not getting the most out of the Thor Max that I could. But what I'm doing now is finally returning to Majora's Mask on the 3DS, and it's been a while since I set this up, but it has the restoration mod to improve the experience. And the reason I'm returning to this is because with LSFG, which is lossless scaling frame generation for Android, I can finally play Majora's Mask 3DS at 60 FPS without a cheat code that makes the game run at double speed. This is something I knew would make me get on with playing the game, so I'm finally going to finish the 3DS version. Now it's not perfect, but the way I've set it up, it seems pretty playable to me, and I've been having a good time with it so far. LSFG is a really great app for bumping up games from 30 FPS to 60 FPS when there isn't a code or patch to do that, and it's something I'll demonstrate later on the Odin 3 as well. My Odin 3 has gone through its share of mods too. One of these days I might consider getting some buttons to have an Xbox layout. To be honest, I don't know why the Odin 3 was not an Xbox layout out of the box, but to be honest, button letters don't confuse me. My Odin 3, I also did the Thermal Putty Pro mod, which helped with temps and frames a little bit, but with Cluster Tune, I really don't think this is necessary at all to do now. I'm not sure if others experienced this, but something that frustrated me was that when squeezing the handheld, either by pushing in the stick buttons or just gripping tighter, it would make this really annoying creak. I saw some Reddit threads about this, but I fixed this problem by removing the back shell and lining around 6 pieces of tape inside across where it curves, and now it doesn't squeak anymore. And while you're in there, if you unscrew the modular parts on each side, you can access the shoulder buttons, and by sliding a very slim piece of plastic or card between the dome switch and where the shoulder button touches, you can reduce the click here by a lot. The last time I talked about my Odin 3, I was gushing about my ugly official TPU grip mod where I used a soldering iron to poke many holes around the back to actually have a proper grip. Then about a month ago, I saw someone on Reddit found a brand new TPU shell on AliExpress that has a similar mold to the Odin 2 Portal's shell. I ordered it and received it quite quickly, and honestly I think it's become my new favourite grip for it. It has just enough curve and bulk to get into the palms, but stays relatively slim, and the plastic is a lot like the Thor's TPU shell, which I found gave enough grip to make it comfortable to play. It comes in transparent and transparent black. Obviously I chose black, but I decided to dye it pure black like my Thor shell, and I think it looks much nicer on the black Odin 3. I've mainly been playing my Steam library on the Odin 3, but I have a few other talking points, and since I already mentioned it, I want to talk a bit about lossless scaling on this device. I wanted to make a video about this before, but I didn't think it was perfect enough to really showcase it, so I figure I'll show off some things here. If you're willing to try this, then it's really cool to try some 30 FPS lock games at 60 FPS, but probably best not to try a game that's too fast or responsive. On Xbox with Haku X, Conker's Bad Fur Day is locked to 30 FPS, but with frame generation we can play it at 60. I've never actually played this one through, so I don't know what this will be like during, say, the war levels, but yeah, I was kind of surprised this was a 30 FPS lock game for an Xbox game. The PS2 actually has a decent amount of games running at 60 FPS, as well as codes for some that need it, but there's a few that are problematic or don't. With LSFG you can see the PS2 version of Shadow of the Colossus running at 60 FPS. Because this game has a slowish pace and you don't have to react quickly, I'd consider this with frame generation actually kind of playable. Moving on to a new emulator for a sec, we've had a brand new Xbox 360 emulator for about a month now, and the results have been mixed, with some stuff surprisingly playable and others not so much. It's the type of thing I'd usually make a video about, but there's not many 360 exclusives I'm interested in at the moment, and games like Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey aren't playable yet. Though I was happy to see that Hydro Thunder Hurricane seems to work quite well, and it's a very fun arcadey racer that's worth giving a go if you like that sort of thing. You can play the Goldeneye 007 HD leak on here, though there is a PC port you can try adding that's likely more stable if you can get it to work. Perfect Dark doesn't run properly here as it has graphical errors, so at this time I still think the best way to play it is to run Xenia Canary in GameHub and run Perfect Dark HD that way. But yeah, I very much think X360 Mobile needs more time to cook before it's really worth diving into properly. With PC gaming on the Odin 3, I've not kept up to date with exactly what is capable, but at the moment I'm using GameNative and GameHub. GameNative is my go-to, and it's the most out-of-the-box experience you can have for someone who just wants to game. If it's not on by default, you can turn on auto-apply known config in the settings, and hey presto, every Steam game you download, it will start with known settings for the device you're using that works. That's not to say there isn't a little wiggle room, but without any tinkering there's a lot you can play. And then I also used GameHub to do some things I wasn't able to do in GameNative, like play split second with a third-party app that lets me bind controls, whilst also using a patched exe for 60 FPS gameplay. But what I'm thinking lately, actually, with how I've tested Resident Evil 4 for example, is that if you want to be right on the cusp and get more modern games running decently, then maybe GameHub is the way to go. Not only did GameHub give me much better and more stable performance in-game, but its frame gen seemed to be smoother too. So I'm thinking for a while now I'll be using GameNative for my no-fuss Steam gaming, jump right into something and play. But if I want to try something more demanding and more recent, then I'll tinker a bit more with GameHub. When it comes to gaming, I finished Crysis 2 about a month ago, and the whole thing played great at 60 FPS besides a couple of crashes later on. It's a pretty large game, so I uninstalled it and I started testing Crysis 3 on here, which is also running very well as well. I also got into some Metroidvanias again and played through 9 Souls and 9 Years of Shadow. 9 Souls is actually very good. I do have some issues with it as a 2D Sekiro-like, but for the most part it was very enjoyable to explore and fight, especially later on in the game, with the true ending boss being a highlight. There was one area which is a laboratory which had some really weird frame dips that didn't happen anywhere else, so maybe there's a configuration to smooth that out. 9 Years of Shadow is what I call a comfy Metroidvania. It reminded me very much of the DS era of Castlevania titles, and is a game you could easily binge in a day and have a good time. My main complaints were that it was quite easy and some of the maps get a bit boring. It does what Portrait of Ruin does, where besides the main castle you have mini Metroidvania areas which are contained paintings you jump in and are mostly challenge areas. I find this to be more padding than actually crafting like a big enjoyable map to explore. But the different elements were a really cool way of spicing things up, and I particularly enjoyed moving around in the mermaid mode. Khazan, the first Berserker, is a great example of a more modern game running very well in GameNative. After 9 Souls, I wanted something 3D and Souls-like to jump into, and while I think this game is quite well praised, I just didn't like the Neo/Diablo style loot system, and I felt like the level design to be a bit dull. It also seemed like the best way to play without knowing the combat system fully was to just increase your stamina. After beating Viper, which seems to be considered the first proper skill check boss in the game, I just didn't feel that compelled to play anymore. Maybe someone in the comments can convince me to keep playing. It seems like it has a great combat system, but I'm also just not a fan of very grindy, multi-phase boss fights that test patience more than skill. I want to flex and feel like I'm a boss too. I also briefly want to show this yellow taxi goes vroom game. It's on sale right now, and I picked this one up from one of TechDweeb's videos, and it does feel like a cool throwback to N64 collectathons, but with a driving twist. It surprisingly has some cool movement tech in it, and it's a perfect fit for a handheld. I'm sure this would easily play on an 8 Gen 2 device as well, but I just prefer to play most things on the Odin 3 now. I'm always kind of annoyed when people do their reviews of the Odin 3 and they do not mention the speaker quality. I'm a huge sound guy, so it makes gaming a lot more enjoyable for me compared to other devices. Moving over to GameHub now, and Wreckfest is something I bought in the Steam summer sale. For me, it was less than £3, and I heard good things that it was a decent racer and modern destruction derby. I actually first tried this on GameNative, and although it ran decently, it wasn't as smooth in some of the races as I'd like. Unless I was somehow doing something wrong, even with GameNative's frame generation, it always looked like ass to me when I feel like a game might need it. Moving over to GameHub, and not only do I have some more up-to-date options when it comes to compatibility layers and graphics drivers, for example, but the frame gen is really good, and it gives just the kick I want. And this is what was convincing me that playing more big-hitter titles on the Odin 3 is probably best on GameHub, but it may be worth investigating both just to get the best experience possible. The other game we'll look at here is Resident Evil 4, which actually kind of blew me away. In the past, I just kind of wrote off modern games like this, thinking they either won't play or won't play well. But as you can see here, we're in Mercenaries, and even with all this going on, we're getting up to 60 FPS, and it's playing very smooth. We're using frame gen and super resolution whilst using the large underclock in cluster tune. I could probably use a smaller underclock, or even try pulse, which I haven't even looked at yet, to get a more refined experience with better battery life. But this is really impressive to see. Even this late game section where the helicopter comes in and the action is crazy, the performance is still amazing. So I'll let the footage speak for itself here. Also, this is a bit of a thing for me. I really wanted to get Deus Ex Mankind Divided working, but as much as I've tried, nothing seems to work. I've seen the game running on Winlater, but I'm throwing down a call to action here. If anyone can get Mankind Divided working, I want to know, because I'd love to play that again, and I've got DLC for it I've never touched. It was a pretty advanced game for its time, and maybe it could be an actual PC problem is the solution. Or maybe an update to these apps will fix it in the future, but yeah, it would be great to see this working on the Odin 3. If you're only interested in handhelds, then you can kind of finish the video here, but I'm going to be talking about my Sinden lightguns as I've been setting them up recently. I backed the Sinden lightguns back around August 2020 and have had mine for well over 5 years now. And at the time, I loved going through a bunch of classic lightgun games, but several of them were difficult to set up back then. After a while, I sort of lost interest, but I knew one day I wanted to see them up again on a bigger display and get people to relive the good old arcade days. Then I just forgot that I still had the guns, and it wasn't until I thought about repurposing my old PC, which I was mainly keeping as a backup for work just in case, when I decided, wait a damn minute, it's time to bring back the light guns. It's funny actually, because I only realized the other day that Joey from Joey's Retro Handhelds actually did a video on the Sinden lightguns only a month ago, which kind of weirded me out, like we were like psychically on the same wavelength for a moment. But in my case, I just wanted to see them played on as big a display as possible. Now, I'm not here to compare light guns or give recommendations. It's easy to find some modern day light gun comparisons for modern screens, and one gun setup will be better for some than others. The Sinden, however, gets very deep, and setting up everything takes a lot of time, but I do enjoy a good project. And my old PC has enough juice to do the stuff I need it to. It has a GTX 1080, and it was going to be a placeholder living room PC until the Steam Machine went on sale, which, suffice to say, I don't think I'm getting now. So now this will be a PC I just experiment with, and right now I can't be bothered with setting up a launcher, so I've got all the games I've set up as shortcuts on the desktop. Each of these shortcuts are for BAT files that execute a bunch of launch parameters to play the games instantly and escape to close the game out. And some I made some custom icons so it all looks pretty uniform. And after much setup, I have many games to dive into, all set up for 2 guns where possible, excluding the 2-player Time Crysis games that requires a screen for each player. Some of these games I chose their console versions, such as Time Crysis 2, which has a lot of extras, and I just seem to like it more than the main version. The Techno Parrot games kind of intrigue me the most due to being more modern games and ones I just never saw in arcades. And there's several more of these games I could add to my library if I decided to check them out in the end. But it's super cool to just turn on this PC and play any of the Time Crysis or House of the Dead games on a giant TV, get some party action going on in point blank, shoot some aliens with a buddy, or bro out with cops, SWATs and military light gun games. To break down how the Sinden works quickly, the gun has a camera which tracks the screen and controls the mouse where it points. Using the Sinden software, and in some cases additional software such as No Mousey or Demol Shooter, we are able to have more seamless light gun experiences with more games. In some games you can even change settings or modify files to remove on-screen cursors and such for a truer light gun experience. With Sinden you are always using a white border which you can tweak the size of to basically tell the gun that this is the screen to work with. So having other light sources, bright reflected surfaces or bright windows near the screen is not ideal. The only system I've not really set up are Wii shooters for the Wii. I'm not really too bothered about these, and setting up 2 players with the Sinden requires effort I can't be bothered with. Maybe someday I'll check out the Resident Evil ones and make them like proper light gun experiences, but until then there's plenty to get stuck into here. And that's all I've got to say for today. Hopefully I won't take as long to make another video. The point of this channel really is when I'm excited about a handheld or some new software, then I'm inspired to make something about it. But I'm finding I've just been less interested in gaming recently and wanted to spice things up. The light guns have been a cool project to work on, but they're a pretty niche interest, I think. Maybe I should talk about what my next dream handheld would be, but to be honest it's literally a modern PSP Go. I always mention it and it's just a thing I'd drop money on immediately. Something that can do up to PS2 and be truly pocketable, like I'd barely notice it with my phone in my pocket. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a like and subscribe. I would actually love to be able to review the Retro Pocket Nova and optimistically have the view that I thought I didn't want it, but actually it's great. So we'll see if that happens. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.